Okay, and welcome to this demo of NikSEPBali.mp4 Pro, one of the 6 plugins in the Nik Google collection. And in this demo I will convert this rather difficult and high contrast image into a black and white, and I will use SEPBali.mp4 Pro 2 for that. I will show you the Photoshop Smart Object workflow, but if you don't have Photoshop, you could also achieve the identical effect by just running the plugin within Lightroom or even within Aperture. But as I said, let's use the Photoshop workflow, because the advantage of the Photoshop Smart Object workflow is that you can always revisit your settings later. So from Lightroom, I will send this image over to Photoshop as a smart object via the Photo Edit in Open as Smart Object workflow. I will scoot over my Photoshop window from my other monitor. Then here, this icon is indicative of the fact that we're working with the smart object. Now, the nice thing about the smart object is that actually when Lightroom sent this file over to Photoshop, it put in a copy of the original RAW in there. So for example, I actually noticed that I have forgotten to turn on my lens correction, so I can do that in here, which is kind of cool. Okay, now let's run SEPBali.mp4 Pro, filter Nik software, SEPBali.mp4 Pro. SEPBali.mp4 Pro has identified that the active layer is a smart object. That's not a problem, that's what we wanted to do. And now we're in the SEPBali.mp4 Pro interface. Now, there are various ways of converting to black and white, and as you see, the default conversion isn't necessarily all that great, but as you will also see, it only takes a couple of clicks to turn this into something a lot better. One of the ways of converting to black and white in SEPBali.mp4 Pro is by using the film simulations. Now I will keep this for another tutorial, and I will just use the workflow that I often use, and that's with the presets on the left hand panel. I prefer not to spend too much time tweaking the sliders over here, but setting a preset and then using whatever time I have left to finesse the image with control points, because to me control points are the real added value and the real secret sauce of all Nik plugins, and especially SEPBali.mp4 Pro. So as you see, I have a couple of presets that are my favorites, and I have marked these with by clicking on the little star icon, which puts them in the favorites tab. So for example, if you always have the same presets that you want to apply, you just mark them with the red star here, and then they appear in your favorites panel. So I will use the Wet Rocks preset, and as you see, this immediately, I'm a fan of the big, nice, heavy, black, darkish images, and this applies this kind of moody black and white conversion. And of course it's a little bit too dark, but we're not finished yet. One unique slider in SEPBali.mp4 Pro is the dynamic brightness slider, which will increase, in this case, if I increase it, it will increase the brightness of the dark parts more than the bright parts. So in this case, I want to brighten up the image, but I want to protect as much as possible the sky detail. That's what the dynamic brightness slider will do. It's not a regular brightness slider, which would increase everything in the same way and thereby reduce contrast. As you can see, if I put the dynamic brightness slider up, it will mainly increase the dark tones, as here. Okay, now it's still not bright enough, so what I will do is I will increase the overall brightness slightly to here, and then I need some further local adjustments in my image, and this I can do by means of control points. Now, for those of you new to control points are actually really cool, and what they do is, for example, I want to brighten the stairs here. So what I do is I just put a control point on a pixel that is representative for the image that I want to work on, and in this case I put it on the stairs, and the only thing I have to do is drag a circle, the radius of this circle, to encompass the entire stairs, and then within this circle the viewpoint technology algorithms, which are patented by the way, will look for similar pixels. They will make a mask, and they will limit whatever change I will now subsequently make. They will limit that to that specific selection. So internally under the hood, this has made a selection of roughly of the stairs, and I can, for example, now increase the brightness of the stairs without affecting anything else. Now, whenever I see stair like this, I also want to increase what is called the structure. And the structure in SilverFX Pro is similar to what, for example, in Lightroom is called clarity. It enhances local contrast, and it really makes the patina of stuff stand out. So, for example, if I increase the structure on these stairs, you see they immediately, instead of a 200-year-old stairs, it's now like a 400-year-old set of stairs. So let me quickly go into the split preview, and yeah, this is the image before any adjustments, and this is after my brightness preset and clarity adjustments. Okay, so this is already starting to look a lot better. I will add another control point in these trees here, as I slightly want to lighten them too, and I will slightly increase their brightness. And very often I find that whenever you increase brightness, you run the risk of the image becoming, or that part of the image becoming, a little bit too washed out compared to the rest. So I will often increase contrast slightly as well to make the changes blend into the surroundings a little bit better. Now I want even more detail in the clouds, so I will put a control point in the clouds, just drag the circle of the slider until it encompasses the clouds. Imagine how difficult this would be to select in a regular editing application. I just put this control point and I will drag down the brightness, and you see I get more clouds detail. Now another thing I want to do is I want to brighten the left part of the stairs over here, or rather of the stair railing, because it's a little bit too dark compared to the right part. Now unfortunately I don't have a control point. My control points are circular, so I would need to put in a very big control point to encompass the whole left part of the stairs, and this would probably also select unwanted areas. So instead, what I will do, instead of using one big control point, I will actually make up this shape of this stair by combining a number of smaller control points. So you see I'm putting a control point in here, and then by Alt dragging and clicking I can duplicate that control point and put it a little bit smaller over here. I will Alt click and duplicate again, put it over here. Now if you're saying I don't see anything yet, that's right, that's because I'm first putting out my control points, and then I will change the settings. Okay, and I'll put another one over here. And you needn't be really 100% secure because, or trolled, because these control points have built-in feathering mechanisms that will make the transitions blend in really well with their surroundings. So now what I will do is I will marquee select by click dragging, and I will group these control points by hitting Command or Control G. And now these will behave as one. Their areas of influence will be combined, and I only have one set of controls to play around with now. So dragging the brightness, as you can see, up will increase the brightness on the entire left part of the stairs. I will overdo it so that you see the effect, and then I will put it to the value I want. And again, I will also increase contrast slightly to make the edits blend into the surroundings better, and I might even decide to increase the structure a little bit too. Now just for fun's sake, let's compare where we started from in only these couple of minutes, and you see we've come a long way. I will use the same trick or technique to slightly lighten this protrusion here, and I will build this up with 3 smaller control points to simulate its shape as well as I can. Group them, increase their brightness, increase the structure maybe slightly, and increase the contrast. Okay, So in a way, you could think of control points as being atoms, and that's the reason why they are circular, because with a circle or with an atom you can build any shape you want, and for the most part just the one regular circular control point will do all you need, but for more tricky selections you can combine them into whatever shape and area you want. And again, the software will only look for pixels that match the reference pixel within the circular area that you have defined. Now it's time to maybe change the overall contrast a little bit, and I will do this with the unique soft contrast slider, which actually is a different take on contrast and which deals with contrast, but in a, as the slider calls itself, a soft way, less hard than regular contrast. And it's also one of these unique and proprietary algorithms that makes SilverFX Pro such a nice application to work with. As you see, I actually diminished the contrast slightly because there was so much of it in my original image. Okay, now coming back to my gatekeeper here, I want to work on him a little bit too, because the Wet Rocks preset has darkened his arms a little bit too much. And again, imagine how much work it would be to paint in these arms with a dodging tool, or to make a selection and then lighten these. In this case, it's just a matter of putting a control point on the arm and adjusting the brightness slider, and you see the arms magically get brighter and all the rest around him is not affected at all. So that's the beauty of control points. I will also quickly brighten his face a little bit with another control point. I don't really know if there is a limit to there is a limit, but I don't know how high it is, and I have never encountered the real limit to working with control points. Now another nice thing is that we can actually, in the same application, we can filter, or rather we can apply some sepia toning if we want to. I'm generally not a fan of tinting and toning, but just because I can, I will in this case, and I will use a coffee toner preset, and then I will decrease the strength slightly to something a little bit more subtle. And you have separate control over the highlight toning and the shadows toning, so that's all in there. What you also have is a way to add a vignette or burn the edges, or even, which I kind of like, to give the image an old school film border, like for example this one. And again, you can play with the size and the spread and whatnot. Now, for example, here I see that it touches the left shoe. Decrease the white area around the border slightly, and there I have my negative border. Now, one final thing to tweak this image is that we have a histogram here, and we also have what is called a zoning system, and which is reminiscent of the zone system of Ansel Adams, of course. And for example, I can click on the 0 area, which shows me everything that is pure black, and in this case I see that there is no real, except for the border, which is of course to be expected, but there's no real true black in this image. So I can now go to my levels adjustment and drag this a little bit to the right, so that I have set a real black point in my image, so that I maximize the contrast in my image. So whenever I see the first yellow pixels appear in the image, then I know I have optimized the black level. And I will do the same for the whites. So I have a zone 10. I will unclick zone 0, and you see the only white right now is the paper white. I will go to my levels dialog again and drag that up until the first blue lines appear, and now I have optimized my white point in my image. Okay, and that's about it. Again, before, after, in only a couple of minutes time in SilverFX Pro. Now if I press OK, this returns me to Photoshop, from where I can then save the file, and this will return my file back to Lightroom. So just a quick before and after view of the original and the enhanced image in Silver FX Pro. Now, as I said, the nice thing about the smart object workflow, even if you're working with Lightroom, is that, for example, suppose I show this to the art director or whoever needs to print this image, and he says, I really like the conversion, but I wish you hadn't used the negative border, because the publication is all about images that bleed off the page, so your negative border is really out of place. Well, if I hadn't used the smart object workflow, then I would have to revisit my entire conversion. But because I have used the Silver FX Pro as a smart filter in Photoshop, I can revisit just the negative border and change only that. Now, the way to do this is from Lightroom. I have to first get back to Photoshop, so I choose Photo, Edit In, and this time I choose Edit in Photoshop CS6, and contrary to what you may normally do, I choose in this case Edit Original, because I want to edit the original TIFF file that I produced the first time that I went to Silver FX Pro. So I choose Edit. This will open up my image in Photoshop CS6 in this case, and then from here on I can choose I can just double click on the Silver FX Pro name here. This is the smart filter layer, and I will go back into the image with all my edits and all my control points intact. So you see the control points I put here, the group I put on the left hand of the stairs, the brightening of the trees on the left hand, they're all there. So the only thing that I want to do right now is move back to my negative borders, image borders, set that to off, click on OK, which will return the image to Photoshop. In Photoshop, click on Save, and this will return the image without borders to Lightroom, and I will have a happy editor. So that's it for now. Stay tuned for more tips on Lightroom, Photoshop, and the Google Nik software collection.